Hello, Inspired Hive. I feel so called to deliver a message today that I am just coming here out of the blue to bring some conversation with me and with you around self leadership. And this is a topic I've been asked to speak on a few times recently. And also, I feel this is a topic that a lot of folks are trying to navigate how to lead some things when they're feeling a bit alone or uncertain or unsure or out in their own. And I wanted to bring back some ideas and concepts that I've spoken on previously, but not on the podcast. And I thought this might be a beautiful opportunity for you and I to have some time together to maybe even go through a little bit of an activity together to really get your thinking, your mindset, your confidence to a different level today. So maybe grab some note paper, grab a pen, and sit back and have a listen to this episode of the Inspired Head podcast that focuses in on some self leadership concepts. While we begin this conversation, I want you to really think back to a time in your life where maybe it was a very difficult time. Maybe there was a giant challenge before you, maybe a very difficult experience that you were going through in life, that you didn't really know how you were going to get through. Maybe this is something that was a brand new experience for you. Maybe it was jumping into grad school. Maybe it was buying your first home. Maybe it was leaving a workplace that you were not feeling supported in. Maybe it was a divorce. Whatever it is for you, I want you to think back to those times, that experience, and as you were embarking upon that situation or those events where you didn't have the plan, you didn't know how it was going to go, you didn't know how you were going to get through, and you may be conjuring up something really gigantic and enormous, or it may be something that has occurred again in your world. But I want you to really think about where you were, how you were feeling, where your confidence was at those moments, where your positioning was in life in those moments, and kind of get back to that time. And obviously, there's some time and space between then and now, but I want you to really try hard to be back in that moment. And I'm going to bring up a moment that I have not experienced from the experience itself, but I experienced it as a mom. And the moment I'm conjuring up is the moment someone is jumping out of a perfectly fine airplane to learn parachuting. Now, this again was not me. Both of my children have done this activity, one of which I had the stress and challenge of actually watching as it happened. One of the things that this lesson brings to me is one, the experience of viewing this from another's perspective, two, hearing this experience from the person's perspective, and realizing that in those moments when that is only you, you are not doing this in tandem, you are doing this as a solo individual. There is a lot that you must rely upon in terms of your own self-development, in terms of your own self-systems, self-ethics, self-regulation in order for you to land that jump. And it brings to mind for me the absolute importance of self-leadership and having systems and strategies and patterns in place that can serve you when these times of challenge come up. And they're going to come up. Not all of us are going to jump out of perfectly fine airplanes. Not all of us are going to need to know how to jump out of maybe a not so great airplane. But we are all going to experience a life challenge. There are going to be roadblocks. There are going to be absolute catastrophes and disasters and unfortunate events that come our way, whether it's in business, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in personal experiences. And having some preparation of how to navigate these times before we embark upon them, before they present themselves to us, is super important. So, as you're contemplating back to this time where maybe you were doing something new for the very first time, or this difficult experience was arising in your world, I want you to think about what systems or habits or maybe even supports you had in place at that time that once you were looking around a little bit in that moment, you could see there was something you could rely upon, call on, fall back to. Maybe even there was another person who had no idea what they were doing either, but you found yourselves both in the situation together. Certainly going through difficult times is easier when there's someone else with us. Doesn't always make it the outcome that we want, but knowing that there's someone or something walking along beside us can help us in those most difficult times. The other component that I want you to think about with your difficult experience is we're looking at this from the other side now. And there is a lot of things between you and that moment. There's a lot of action on your part between then and now. And I want you to notice, even though it might have been tremendously difficult to take that first leap out of the plane or step on that process of what you needed to go through in those difficult times and difficult experiences, if you had not taken those steps, if you had not made that leap, if you had not been in motion, you would not have gained the growth that you have now from that experience. And this is a really powerful consideration where if we can have some gratitude within these challenging times and difficult moments of being grateful for the experience of what we are about to learn, or seeing that this could be good because there is some growth to come, this can shift our mindset so slightly, but so importantly to bigger things. Steps are not easy. Pushing ourselves out of that plane, the very first solo, is not easy. But if you are aware of or familiar with or can call upon some of those systems and strategies and habits and experiences that you've had previously in life, getting through difficult times, you're way ahead of the game. Now, I don't know what your difficult time was that you're conjuring up, but I do know there was very unlikely to be a manual for you as to how to get through, what to do, what a roadmap might look like, or what the game plan might be. And those were all things that as you took one step and then another step and then moved through that challenge, you created or addressed, or in hindsight now have to help you move forward with the rest of the challenges that may come in life. In order to cultivate that roadmap or manual or process, You probably sought out a little bit of information. You may have had to think back in your mind to what you might have learned about some particular topic that could be relevant to what you're dealing with. You may have gone and searched for some research. You may have reached out to colleagues or friend or sought help from someone, which oftentimes when we're experiencing very difficult things, one of the very first steps, but most difficult steps, is asking for help. But those are all important components for guiding ourselves. Just because we're asking for help or leveraging someone's support in a time does not mean that we aren't guiding ourselves. In fact, it means we are seeking the skills and the knowledge and the leverage that we need to help ourselves get through that time. And that's one of the most powerful things you can do in self-leadership, is to surround yourself with others who are supporting your mission. They're not walking in your shoes, but they're providing assistance or research or tools or strategies or ideas that can help you move in your own shoes through those moments. It may be very messy. It may be very intense. But as you are moving through these moments, you are gaining momentum and strength from the courage and the experience of what you have just moved through. As you're now on the other side of that first experience I asked you to think about today, I want you to think about what it feels like having been through that, having gone through it. You might never choose it again, but what does it feel inside in terms of what your growth has been, your learning has been? Maybe there's some confidence that you've gained from that one experience that you can put forth to the next. When we think about challenging times in our business, in our entrepreneurship, in our leadership, we often don't see the exact first start of it or the exact ending stop point of it, but we can see it as a culmination of small, sometimes simple but not easy, consistent steps into that goal or that aim or that mission or the challenge accomplishment that was before us. And what you learned during those times, I want you to just jot a few of those things down. Take a moment to just celebrate that you learned that maybe you're more courageous than you initially thought, that maybe you can do hard things that you didn't initially think you could, that you would not have challenged yourself necessarily by choice, but these experiences that come along can serve to provide that education for you. Good leaders ask great questions. Good leaders ask themselves great questions. And one of the most powerful questions in self-leadership is, how or why is it so difficult to be our own leader? And I think as I make reference to that solo jump out of an airplane, it's hard because we're there alone. It's hard because we have only ourselves to rely upon. It's hard because it highlights the weaknesses that we have within our knowledge, our skill sets, our tool belts. And it's hard because we are vulnerable in those times. Yet, it's one of the most important muscles to build for leadership, for entrepreneurship, for jumping into business, and that is doing those hard things when we are the only one to be reliant upon, and to move through those hard times with the integrity and the consistency and the support that we might give another person during that time, but then it's only ourselves. You see, self-leadership values that internal, consistent action when no one else is looking. It values and encourages our leadership outwardly to others, because those are the easier things for us to do than to speak kindly and encouragingly and confidently to ourselves. So, in those times when we find ourselves soloing in leadership, soloing in entrepreneurship, or soloing in a difficult experience or time, leaning in to our purpose, leaning into the greater lessons, leaning into how this experience can help us be in service to others, to recognize that this moment is planted before us to help us see what's larger than just ourselves, to give us perspective, perhaps, in the greater picture of what we are growing into, what we are serving into, and being grateful for those lessons in those moments of challenge, of helping us to grow in the moment when we need to do a little soloing, when we need to do growth for ourselves, and then to bring that into our community. So, as we recap today, thinking about when difficult things arise, when challenges occur for us, how we might be able to use that as a stepping stone and a tool of reflection to some of the things we've learned from other hard times, to be grateful for new lessons that are bestowed upon us in this moment, and then to see how this can help us rise to serve others in our leadership and our role moving forward in our business, in our entrepreneurship, in our life, and most importantly, in our own personal journey to greatness. As I end every episode, I am going to end this episode with a quote from one of my favorites, Winnie the Pooh. You are braver than you believe. You are stronger than you seem. You are smarter than you think. And you are loved more than you will ever know. And when that is something you internalize into your everyday practice for yourself, the sky is the limit. The world is your oyster, and you will be inspiring all those around you to grow themselves as well.
So grateful you listened to this episode of the Inspired Hive podcast. Be sure to follow me on social media at Inspired Hive Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. I can't wait to see you back here for our next episode, and as always, remember to live inspired.